Welcome to the Electronic Vendor Portal registration video. This video will cover the registration process for the Electronic Vendor Portal. Before we start going over the registration process, let's first talk about what is the Electronic Vendor Portal. The Electronic Vendor Portal allows vendors to register to do business with the state of North Carolina and receive purchase orders and collaborative requisitions from state of North Carolina buyers. It also allows vendors to view and respond to formal solicitations through the EVP and Ariba Business Network systems. The Electronic Vendor Portal, or EVP system, also allows vendors to electronically submit Hub and NCSBE applications. Now that we've covered the basics of what is the Electronic Vendor Portal, we'll go ahead and start a registration. To get started, this is the home page for the Electronic Vendor Portal system. To start our registration, we're going to click the Sign In or Register button here. Next, I'm going to select the Login button. And select the Don't Have an Account, Sign Up Now option. I'm going to enter in an email address into the email address field and select the Send Verification Code button. Once the verification code is sent, you will need to check the email inbox that you entered in for the verification code. You'll grab the verification code from your email, enter into the verification code field, and select the Verify Code button. Next, you'll go ahead and set a password. Then retype that password in. Type in the given name of the person registering the company, which is also their first name, and then type the surname or the last name of the person registering the company. Finally, you'll select the Create button at the bottom of the page. Now the system is going to load and start creating your contact, and it will take you back to the landing page where you'll notice you have a red banner at the top of the screen saying you have not registered your vendor account and to please complete your registration. To complete your registration, you would start by clicking the Complete Registration button, and the system will take you to the vendor information page. The vendor information page is going to start by asking for the name of the vendor you are registering. And the vendor type that corresponds to the vendor you are registering. There are three different options for vendor type. There's US vendor, foreign vendor with US federal tax ID number, foreign vendor without US federal tax ID number. If you select either US vendor or foreign vendor with US federal tax ID number, you will have to fill out your tax ID number. If you select foreign vendor without US federal tax ID number, the tax ID number fields will go away. Once you have selected your vendor type, if applicable, you'll enter in your federal tax ID number. Then retype or re-enter that tax ID number into the re-enter federal tax ID number field. Next, we'll select the registration types that we are registering our company for. To select a registration type, you click into the registration type field and select the drop-down arrow. And there are four different registration types you can select from. There's EVP, e-procurement, Hub, or historically underutilized business, and NCSBE, or North Carolina Small Business Enterprise Certification. If you don't know which registration type you should select, you can click on the About Registration Types link to get more information about the various registration types. After selecting the applicable registration types, you will check or click on the checkbox next to I have read and agree to the EVP terms of use, and click the blue Next button at the bottom of the page. And once the page loads, you'll be taken to the company information page. And the first field on the company information page is the vendor name field. This vendor name field will bring over the name that you populated in the vendor information tab. If you want to, you can update this vendor name field, but it is not necessary. The next section is for the IRS verification status. The IRS verification status will default to pending and will update based on whether the vendor name on tax documentation or vendor name on tax documents and the federal tax ID number fields match what the IRS has in their database. If it matches, the IRS verification status will update to verified. If it does not, it will update to not verified. The next field is the vendor name on tax documents. If your vendor name on your tax documents is different from your vendor name, you will need to update this field to accurately represent what is listed on your tax documentation. Next, you'll need to select, is this company E-verified? The E-verification system is a system that allows enrolled employers to verify and confirm that the eligibility of their employees to work in the United States. There are 3 options for this field: yes, no, and unknown. Next, you'll be asked to input your unique entity identifier. If you don't know what a unique entity identifier or UEI is, there is a prompt, what is UEI, which has more information as well as a link to a site with even further information. The unique entity identifier or UEI is a unique identifier for entities created by the US federal government in the SAM.gov system and was created to replace the Duns and Bradstreet number. Next, the system will ask you for a company website. This is not a required field, but so you do not have to put anything in this field. And if you do populate this field, do know that the system will automatically add the https:// to the beginning of the website address. In the next section, we have 3 questions. Is this company a government entity? Is this company an educational entity? And registered with NC Secretary of State. The first 2 questions will default to no if HUB or NCSBE registration type is selected, because only for-profit firms can be certified as HUB or NCSBE. If you did accidentally select HUB or NCSBE registration type, you can scroll to the bottom of the page and click the previous button to go back to the vendor information page and remove those registration types. If applicable, after removing those types or in the first place, you would select the type of government entity or educational entity that you are registering. And then next, you would select whether or not you are registered with the NC Secretary of State. So again, you would click the drop-down menu, and there are 3 options: yes, no, or unknown. If you are registered with the NC Secretary of State and have a NC Secretary of State ID or an SOS ID, you can go ahead and enter that ID into the next field and continue scrolling down. The next section is going to ask you to select all that apply to your company that you are registering. The first statement is, I am registering as an individual or sole proprietorship. If that represents your company, you would check the box next to that statement and move on. Next statement asks, this company is based in North Carolina. Again, you would check the box next to the statement if it applies to your company and continue moving on. The next statement asks, the company is this company a small business? Small businesses must fit into one of the following criteria. And then you'll notice that there are 4 bullet points that describe the criteria that your company would need to fit into to qualify as a small business. And again, if applicable, you would check the box next to that statement. And then finally, the last 3 statements will default to no if a HUB or NCSBE registration is selected. And those statements are, this company is a disabled business enterprise. This company is not for profit. This company is a non-profit work center for the blind and severely disabled. Next, we have our commodity and construction codes section. In this section, we can select commodity codes or construction codes for the company level of our company. By selecting codes in this section, it will enable this company to be pulled back in for searches relating to those commodity codes or construction codes in the public vendor search. To add a commodity code, you click the Add Commodity Code button. And then in the pop-out menu, you'd either search for a specific command code or by a root word or phrase, or you can scroll through and click through the various pages to find appropriate command codes. To select a command code, you would check the box next to the command code. If a command code is selected that you don't actually want to select, you can either uncheck the box or hit the X next to the box in the command codes selected section. Once the command codes have been selected, you can go ahead and select the Add Command Codes button, and you'll see a list of the added command codes. If you notice at this point that there is a command code that you don't want included for your vendor registration, you can click the drop-down arrow next to said command code and select the Remove Command Code option, and then click OK. To add a construction code, you'd click the blue Add Construction Codes button. And then you can either scroll through and check the boxes next to any relevant command codes, or you can use this search box in the upper right-hand corner of the pop-out menu to search for specific construction codes. Once the relevant codes are found, you can check the boxes next to them. And if you accidentally check a box that you didn't mean to check, you can go ahead and click in the box to uncheck it. Or you can scroll down in the construction code selected section. You can click the X next to the construction code. Once you're satisfied with the list of codes that you have selected, you can select the Add Construction Code button. And then you should see the construction codes populate in your construction codes list. And you can remove said construction codes by clicking the drop-down arrow next to them and selecting the Remove Construction Code option. Our last section on this page is the Design Services section. You can check the box next to Architectural Services or Engineering Services so that your company would populate in searches revolving around those services. And once you have populated all the required fields on this page, you can go ahead and click this blue Next button to move on to the next page. Our next page is the Contacts page. To add a new contact, you'd select the Add Contacts button, then fill out the information for the contact. The job title field is not a required field, so you can skip that field if you would like to. Country will default to United States. If you need to select a different country, you can click on the search button or this magnifying glass button. Then you need to enter in a phone number and select an access level. So there are 3 different access levels in EVP or the electronic vendor portal system. There's account owner, which is the highest access level and will allow the contact that you are creating to edit anything that is editable on the field on the account, and will also allow this contact to submit bid or responses to solicitations. There's account maintenance, which will allow the contact to again submit bid responses or responses to solicitations. It will also allow the contact to edit most fields on the account. The contacts with the account maintenance role will not be able to edit the information on the company information tab. And then finally, there's the read-only access level. The read-only access level will allow a contact to log in and view the information on the account, but will not allow them to make any edits on the account. Next, there's a checkbox next to this contact as a sourcing contact. You can check this box to designate the contact that you're creating as a sourcing contact, which means that they'll have the ability to click the Intends to Participate button on solicitations that use the Ariba Business Network system. And if another sourcing contact on the account selects the Intends to Participate button, this contact will also receive an email with instructions for getting to that Ariba solicitation. Finally, there's the Design Services and Construction Services sections. You can check the boxes next to these sections to enable this content to receive bid notifications. Once you have filled out all the required fields for creating a contact, you can select the Submit button at the bottom of the page. And then you should see your newly created contact included in the list of contacts. If applicable, in the construction services section, you can check one of these various boxes to indicate whether this company has an electrical contractor, general contractor, or so on and so forth. Once you check the box, you can type in the license number. You can select which contact holds the license and any other various fields that it asks for relating to the contractor service that you selected. And finally, once all the required fields are filled out, you can select this blue next button at the bottom of the page to move on to the next page. Our next page is the locations page. To create a location, you would select the blue create button. And then on the pop-up box that appears, you would name your location. And then you would need to select a primary address on vendor search. So you would select the search button in that section. You'll notice in your search results that there are currently no primary addresses on vendor search, and that's because we have not created any yet. So you would select the new button in the bottom left-hand corner of the page, and then it's going to ask you to name your primary address on vendor search, associate a contact with the primary address on vendor search, associate an address with your primary address on vendor search, and you'll notice that when we click the magnifying glass for the address, we don't have any search results. Again, this is because no addresses have been created for this account yet, so we will need to click the new button in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, and we will need to name our address. Then we can select whether or not this address is an international address, fill out line item 1, select the state for this address, the county for this address, type in the name of the city the address is in, and the zip code. And once all the required fields for our address have been populated, we can hit this submit button to finish creating our address. And then we'll notice that it populates in our address search results. So now we can hit the select button. Last two fields on the primary address on vendor search create screen is the email address and phone number fields. These are not required fields. And once you have populated all of the required fields, you can go ahead and hit the submit button and then select. And now the primary address on vendor search has been populated. Our next sections are e-procurement addresses. They are the order from, remit to, bill to. These sections are not required unless the registration type e-procurement is selected. The order from will determine where purchase orders are sent. The remit to will determine who and where payments are sent out to. And the bill to will determine where invoices for the NCE procurement transaction fee are sent. To start off with, we're going to select the magnifying glass next to order from. And then again, there are no order froms in our search results because no order froms have been created for this vendor account. So we will select new and begin filling out the information for a new order from. First, it's going to start off by asking us for a name. So populate a name, associate a contact with the order from, associate an address with the order from, and populate an email address. The last field on the create an order from screen is the phone number field. The phone number field is not a required field. And once all the required fields have been filled out, you can hit the submit button to finish creating the order from. And then you can hit the select button to select the newly created order from. Next, we'll go ahead and create a remit to. To do so, we're going to click the magnifying glass button and then select new. And then for remit tos, the first field it asks for is the checks payable field. So this is going to ask us where we want our checks made payable to. And we have two options. We have location name or vendor name. Next, it's going to ask us to name our remit to. And then for a contact to associate with our remit to. And for an address to associate with our remit to. And then the final two fields on the Create Remit To screen are optional, and those are the email address and phone number fields. Once all the required fields have been filled out, we can click the Submit button to finish creating our Remit To, and then click the Select button to select our created Remit To. If necessary, we could select the New button and continue making additional Remit Tos. And then the last field on the locations page is the Build To. So we're going to select the Search button, then hit New because, again, we haven't created any Build Tos yet on this vendor account. And it's going to ask us for a Build To name, contact to associate with the Build To, address, and an email address. And then finally, the last field is the phone number field, which is not a required field. So we can go ahead and hit the Submit button once all the required fields have been populated, and click the Select button. Now that all the required fields on our location have been populated, we can hit the Submit button at the bottom of the page. If necessary, you can continue to hit the Create button to create more locations. And once you have created all your required locations, you can hit this blue Next button to move on to our last page on the vendor registration. Last page of the vendor registration is the Terms of Use page. We'll scroll through and read and review these terms of use. And once we have scrolled to the bottom, a box will appear next to a statement that says, I have read and agreed to the e-procurement terms of use. We can check the box. And once you check the box, the date accepted will update to the date and time that you checked the box. And we can hit Submit to finish registering for NC, or for the electronic vendor portal system. Once you have finished, or once you have hit the Next button on the next page, you'll notice that you get a confirmation message letting you know that your registration as a vendor has been completed.